This is 2OF Entertainment.
Hey, we're back.
We're back another week. Yeah, another
Who
week.
knew?
We've
Who
got,
knew?
yeah, another fresh week. New artists coming up today, and I like we always say, we always have, I guess, a new artist. But we had an artist last week or so. Did some minimalist work. We talked about that, and today we have another minimalist. I guess I'll call her minimalist artist. In other words, you can really break down a landscape or a painting that you're doing into shapes and form. You don't have to draw a relief on a tree, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you start moving into looking at the iconic look at something, putting in what is important into a painting. Those kind of decisions that have to be made. They're complicated decisions in a simple format because you have to remove all the other peripheral stuff, but you still have to give the feeling of the environment. So we have Gale Blogum.
Now, I will say that I've looked at the slides that you are going to show, and I like everything you're going to show, and I've looked at her site, but she's got one called New York, and I'm like, with being from New York, I was like, I'm fascinated. I like that. It's just this whole, all the noise is gone. It literally is just boom. And I'm like, okay, that'll work.
Well, Gale Hagblom has a special way of looking at a landscape. She's from Saskatchewan, so let's bring Gale in, and we'll
There
what's
you
rather
go.
talking about it. We'll talk. There we go. There's Gale.
We're just going
Hello.
to talk about you. We're just going to talk about you and just not even bring you in for the hour. And that was it. So, well, listen, I'm going to let you and Paul do the art thing because this is where I go. And I'll see you at the end of the show. Have a wonderful interview, and everybody enjoy her interview. There you go. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, Stephen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's been a challenge trying to get you on our air. Holy smokes. We've been trying, and you're so busy and everything else, and we got all the other things in life to get going on. But it's kind of exciting to talk about some of your work today because I think I haven't really noticed over the years what you had been doing, I guess much, but this last while you're a member of Artists in Canada, and that puts your work in front of me where I now can see what you're doing and saying, okay, let's talk about this. I mean, because everybody paints things differently. Everybody sees nuances that are a little, I want to focus on this. I'd like doing that. You can't paint everything in your life, or you have to make decisions and choices. And you've made a very strong choice of how you see things and how you want to visualize what's going on. So I'd like to talk, what about your, can you give a little bit of your art journey, the magic words, art journey, where do you start? And we'll talk about where you're going with it, but where did you start?
So I started in 1978. I took a course with Maya Forsyth at the U of S, and it was a drawing class, and it was, I wasn't that engaged, but I showed a lot of talent, and she took me aside and she just said, what is it that you want to, discover out of this course? Why did you register? So I had to explain, art always came, or the expression of art always came easy for me. And I don't mean to over or understate that or overstate it. It was just that it was something enjoyable for me to do. And it was just a natural kind of activity. And in everything I did, there was an artistic component. So she was quite enthralled, but she gave me a talking to at the end of it and kind of reprimanded me that I didn't have appreciation for what she thought was a gift. So it was quite a compliment, but it still didn't kind of jolt me into any further pursuit, other than I did attend the summer school for the arts at Coppell, and I was just a kid. I was 17, and then I went when I was 18, and these artists were quite well established, and they came from all over, and it wasn't exactly like at Kenderdine and that group. It was a smaller group, but they were still very skilled. And it was interesting for me to be exposed to people who did this for a living. Some of them worked 6 months of the year and practiced medicine the other 6 months so that they could afford to do their art. So, you learn a lot of lessons. And at that point, I didn't really know what I was doing. And I painted a picture based on what my parents had of a Swedish artist in there, and it was an abstracted art piece. And there wasn't anything. I wasn't looking at anything and trying to interpret it. Um, I was really naive and had no experience and no training. So I thought, oh, well, I mean, I was there. I was.
Well,
So,
you made the first step to go to a workshop and to take education.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, that just kind of evolved into, taking a few more classes. And the final course then, before I went off to NSCAD, was with Graham Fowler, who is an extraordinary instructor, really connected. And I applied for ACAD and NSCAD and Emily Carr and OCAD. So that's the Ontario College of Art and Design, Alberta College of Art and Design, Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and Emily Carr. And I was accepted at all. And Graham just said, he had been at Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and he just said, it's lovely there. I think that you'd find it quite lovely. And then my husband and I had gone to a conference there, and I met some of the faculty, and I'd been working as communications coordinator for the Saskatchewan Art Craft Council, and one of the writers that I'd hired for the Craft Factor, which was our international magazine that I art directed and edited, was Sandra Alfoldy. And so I met up with her for a lunch in Halifax, and she said, well, it's right up the street. So I went up there, got an application form, and filled it out, and I was away that fall.
Yeah.
So it was quite lovely. Yeah. And of course, NSCAD, the quality of student was quite, notable. They were from all over the world, and it's such an old and established institution that, and really, really allowed and permitted students to explore in a way that I hadn't really experienced in high school or in my earlier years at the U of S. And yeah, there was a faculty member who just took me aside and kind of did some demos with me, and I caught on. And I think that people underestimate the learning compulsion and the technique and how to use materials and how to apply and how to discover the effects that you want. There's lots of skills that underpin, I think, a gifted artist. I mean, being able to see things, but is one thing, but knowing how to effectively interpret is another thing altogether. So I felt I really got that kind of foundational learning at NSCAD. So, and then I just in between then I went and did a master's in geography and planning, and I had another extraordinary experiences there, and then I went on and I had an opportunity to do an MFA at the U of S with the most extraordinary, the Tim Nolan and of course Alison Norleen, and Graham Fowler had already, retired from his position, although he, remains a friend. But I was really encouraged and given a lot of support, and John Graham was on my committee as well. So it was just fantastic 2 years of being able to create art and learn. And so I've always been a lifelong learner. As a graphic designer, I studied at the Banff Centre for the Arts, new media design, and in my employment in graphic design, I always, took as many opportunities to learn um, the new application that was out every 6 or 3 months. There was always, to keep up with everything, and also to not be stagnant and just to continue to learn. So, at a more senior age, I then did my MFA and had a lovely experience. And during that time, I applied for a MyTex grant, and that took me to Sweden and Finland to study Indigenous art in public space. And while I was there, I attended the Arctic Arts Summit, which is an annual gathering of Northern artists and people who really have a say in what's going on in Arctic regions, and express the concerns with the climate change and the quality of life that's as and at some level diminishing before their eyes. So it's extraordinary to meet almost 500 Sami and people involved with the arts all across the northern region. And there was one held in I believe it was Yellowknife a couple of years ago. And that would be something I would love to reattend, because I have interviews from a lot of artists from that area. And I was in set I stayed in Umeå at the University of Umeå, and I was given an office, and I did printmaking, and I researched and went out about the community and interviewed artists. So it was a lovely special experience to be there for almost 3 months. And I came back and finished the final year, and then COVID hit. And even though we had our graduating exhibitions, really nobody could see them. No public individual could see them. So they're online, but it was kind of a deflating conclusion to the 2 years of study.
It makes one humble, I guess, when that happens. It happens just about every artist, it's not just you or one person that everything shut down for that period of time. I remember doing a major curatorial show at the Craft Council in Saskatoon for Nick Semenoff, and it right in the middle of the blossom of COVID, and it was an extended show, but hardly anybody, only by invitation and small groups, and it slowly got back in, but it never did get the presence it should have had because of COVID. But let's get Stephen to start our first image up here, and we'll just at least have an image up and people can see some of the things that you're doing. But I really want to encourage people, from what you had mentioned, is you try at 3 different colleges or universities now to get into their program and get refused, and you can't give up. You have to keep phoning, sending, trying to get into those programs, though, if you really want to get into them. They have limited space, I guess, part of it, and they also look at your portfolio to see where you are in your development stages. Or, I mean, I personally ended up having to literally pound on the door to get in, and I think because when I came in, I was right under the bar, I was right on the line, and this can happen to every artist that applies for education. And you say, well, how do I make sure that I get in above that next person? And I said, well, I was very fortunate. In those days we had a phone hooked to a wall, and I would phone every day or second day this Mrs. Stevenson. I always remember her from the Alberta College of Art and Design in the day. And finally, she phoned me on a Friday, and she says, Paul, she said, one person dropped out. You said, you were right on the edge. Like, I always was a C student. I was like right there. And on Monday morning, I started class because I hoofed it from Edmonton to Calgary, and I was in. But if you don't, and I felt it was like you come in starstruck. Where am I? What am I doing? And you're with a whole bunch of other people doing the same kind of thing, and you figure out the hierarchy. Who is the really good artists, and who are the mediocre, and some shouldn't be there, and you all settle in as to where you are, and you're always looking for your bar. How can I raise my bar? What can I do to get better? And you look over and you see this other person blowing you away. It's just got like the best work ever. But then what I noticed, when you come in at a lower level, and I won't say lower level, I say not, you're not up to where you should be, your speed. From the fourth year, I noticed that those people who came in experienced almost didn't grow. There wasn't the growth factor in them between in those 4 years of development that there was from the ones who come in and learned, and they tasted it. They wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to be better every day, better. The other ones were better. And then by the end, I think some of the ones from those middle C, B plus type people moved into the A's category, and found themselves and found what they were looking for. And I think this is what I'm just saying. I am really encourage other young artists and even a mature artist to keep pounding away. There's nothing wrong with going back and getting an MFA or a BFA if you've already got, say, an arts degree of some kind. I said you can further what you're doing, you know. So that's my push on that. But this piece I chose for the opening because I think it's a powerful piece. It's an icon. It's an iconic thing, and I'm really, as a Canadian, I'm looking what are our iconic type of things that say Canada rather than the cliched things that say Canada, the Mountie, the horse, you could go on. Um, but this the dory pulled up onto a shore. Can you tell us a little bit about where this came from, the idea?
So, like Mama Anderson, who's a Swedish artist, if you when you listen to anything that she has to talk about, it's always gathering and collecting images. If you don't haven't photographed them yourself, you see things around you that may be in calendars, maybe in magazines, maybe in even newspapers, and you just have your swipe file. It's um, your resource file in it. It's and I if I'm looking at any kind of if I come across an image that intrigues me, then I'll just swipe it and put it in my file. So this was it had a very different background, but this was an image on, and I believe it was on an old calendar, and I just switched up the colors and switched up the setting, the background setting, because I wanted it to be more of a quieter piece. I'd also another boat that I did was in Halifax. As you know, we're near the water, and there's lots of large boats, and there were my photographs, and it was a beautiful magenta, and it's now with Scott Phelps law firm, but it was because I was small in comparison to this massive ship. The photographs have the ship right. The perspective is that it's this massive object right in your face, and so that one was also it's kind of like it's on the same vein. Um, it seems like a fairly solitary boat that it could. I wanted it to appear like it could go onto the water and it could support you, that it was just parked, kind of waiting, with what the future might hold, and that
Uh,
it's
Is that do those type of things go through your mind all the time as to you're putting into what symbolism they mean? Like, you're trying to, why did I put there, and what do I want people to feel when I see these things? I mean, you've seen works by Bill Reed. I mean, it's the boat with all the animals and creatures in it. It's got a story in it, right? There's the works of David Blackwood. I mean, those beautiful etchings of boats and people from Newfoundland, like the hard life that they lived on the island, the rock. And it's just like, this one has left me. Is it when you look at a boat, sometimes there's people can sit in a boat like that at that angle and you can't see them. It's like what could be inside that boat? It becomes this vessel that carries something. It's carrying a message, I get the feeling of there's a symbol here. And I can see your background with boats being a big piece of your history, like the Swedish people and things like. It's getting out on the water was go fishing. It's a lifestyle, right? And as it is on the coasts, everybody has a boat, and I think I love the coloration. So in the choice of like colors, is it? First of all, are you working in acrylics or are you watercolor, or what are you doing initially?
This is oil.
This is oil.
And I find I'm just the most experienced at this point, and it just is the medium that works for me.
Yeah.
I have worked in acrylic as well. It requires more immediacy and more effort because, of course, the drying time is so much accelerated to.
Yeah. Well, there are new acrylics now, the open ones and different things that stay moist a lot longer. But you stay with what you know. I mean, I think if you have to sit down and start relearning a whole new medium, and that can disrupt your thought pattern on focusing on how to produce a product, because you build your layers up in a certain way. And I think, so I think it's, anyway,
So I worked as a urban planner, municipal planner for Waterwolf, which was it is the largest planning district in Saskatchewan. It includes upwards of 32, 34 municipalities, and my office was out in Outlook, and I drove out on that highway to work. And when you're, my son's friend made a comment to my son, does your mom always paint roads? Does she just paint roads?
Yeah.
And there's certainly a lot of nuances that when in any on any highway, when you're looking from side to side, but this is one of those. This is more my aesthetic, where it's just pared down to the simple perspective lines, where it's fading in ahead, and you don't really know where it's going to take you. But and the quality and the colors, that soft kind of watermelon color, peachy orange color is something that does exist, because these are based on some photographs, and those are our setting suns. When we have our colorful skies, that's one of the colors that is usually within our lovely evening setting suns.
Right. Yeah. Definitely, the focus of diminishing line, the horizon line, but it's just a breakup of space. You're looking at. We're going to pick up a bit of air noise here, a little bit somewhere, but on our mics. But I think it's. We get some. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, we'll just talk over top of it a little bit. But I love that rosy tones and the greens. I mean, there's not too often. It's kind of a spring feeling yet. You haven't drawn every leaf tree. There's not a lot of, when you drive down that road, I know it's pretty flat and there's sections that are pretty straight. And you didn't stop at Casino, and I noticed that too. But I think we really have to appreciate this big open sky that we have. And it's nice to see it. It doesn't have to be blue all the time. And it's nice to see it in different parts of the day, time of the day. And I think when you take a landscape like that and you've added a few man-made things to it, which are the telephone pole thing, the diminishing poles, and a road, it puts a human element to it, but in a minimalist way. We are attached to and involved in that landscape, and I guess they're almost like a fence of saying like, oh, we've been here, we are here, and we put telephone poles or hydro poles in the ground and a road to say this is our pathway. But I like this painting. We have a number of them to do here, so they're not all diminishing roads. I have to tell people but we'll go from the other way. We got one of the daylight ones, and so you found one without any telephone poles in it. So this one really strips it down, and
Except that the sky is more painterly, so there's more.
It is a bit more painterly as a field. Yeah, because before the other ones were a little field painting like they were really about the color.
Yeah.
And
Agnes Martin and Mark Rothko, kind of inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's abstraction in your work, and I think, do you feel that design background is helping what you do? Is that where this comes from?
Absolutely. And you were talking about that, the rosy color of the sky in the previous piece. I remember looking through a design book, and here was this beautiful blue nuanced strawberry. So the shock of, and what we presume and our expectations kind of just surprising people that what they're expect to see, can be different, because that's the glory, and the beauty in art is that as the creator of the piece, you have the license. And I mean, I remember one piece, a comment was, well, but that's not the color of the sky. And I thought, well, yes, you're right. But that can be the color of my sky that I've created.
Well, you'd be surprised the colors you can get in a sky, really. But it's just how your perspective is. I mean, typically, artists put a sky at the top of the page, but your sky can actually be at the bottom of the page if you design it well, in through reflection or whatever you want to do. So
the canvas can be all sky.
Yeah, it can be all sky. Yeah. Well, we're going to go through. This is a lovely warm winter painting. This is it might have been warm, might not have been warm. Just that sunset, the feeling of those beautiful colors, that ochres, and those colors that meld with the warm color of snow and the gray. The gray is so essential to this piece. The gray is it's the baking soda that calms things down, right? But it sits. Yes, it's a diminishing line, but it doesn't go to that little point like the previous pieces.
Right.
It's left me that there's more to see. That's what I like about it. Rather than tell me that there's the end of the road. I love this piece because it tells me the road even goes farther than that end point. And when you leave it open like that, it leaves my mind open that I'm just over the hill or just past that thing. I'll be home. And I think, I don't know how many people travel on the prairie, but they say, oh, it's so many hours to travel between this place and that place. And you kind of measure your spots by the little towns you go through, or the villages, and the elevators that we used to be markers along the road. Oh, there's that elevator. Okay, I got 2 more elevators before I get home, one of those things. But again, your work doesn't show those pieces. Again, there is those little poles so softly in the diminishing over on the right-hand side that are saying we're still here, but stay on the road. I love, yeah. But until if people have never traveled on really flat highways. We have sections of Saskatchewan that are like Manitoba is the same, and some lower parts of Alberta are very much the same like that. And through the prairies, that you can fall asleep driving and still wake up and be on the road, just about. And anyway, I just love this as a nice one. Can you speak a little bit more about your
Well,
adding in this one a lot more into the sky?
yeah, I once again, this is inspired from my commuting to Outlook, Saskatchewan for my design or my planning job, and I just found, it's the quiet beauty, but there was just enough in the horizon that um, and I can't even recall if it was late at night or early in the morning. It says sunset, so I must have been on my way home.
Maybe I
And
put that in there. I don't.
yeah, no,
I think that was the title, but
and I just and I you can see just to the left of the road there's and some trees, some growth there, but of course at this distance it was very tiny, but it's suggested there. And I like the road is very quiet. Driving in the winter is really dangerous on the prairies often, and especially at night. And I know that I'd always try to get back to the city before the sun had set, because I had taken that road a couple of nights and I thought I can never do this again. It's so black and dark, our skies, and vast, and of course winter weather is unpredictable and
yeah,
road conditions are unpredictable. So, but
yeah, and there's a lot of animal traffic on the road too. So
yes,
especially
yeah,
that highway, there's a lot of animals traveling across. A lot of deer. So you don't want to be hitting those at night. I tell you. I love this one. So now we've changed I love this one that you changed the perspective of. They're like little slices of pie, and then the rest of the pumpkin pie is left at the top. And I just, obviously,
and there's an example of an unusual, color combinations, but it's interesting because I of the series, and you've picked several of them. um, I was at a show and sale, and a gentleman came in and walked right past me, and his wife came up to me and looked at me, and she said, he hasn't been able to stop thinking about this type of work that you do, and he was determined that he wanted to own one. And I said, well, actually, that's the last one remaining. And she said, well, it's his. He's gotta have it. So, and I just thought that was such a nice compliment, because you can see that the polls start well. I mean, they could have started a little bit earlier in the forefront of but I just left them to just be parted. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I enjoy this piece too, because I can see the roads. I mean, this was like I said, my period of working as a full-time municipal planner, and this was the joy of being on that road, being on that highway.
Well, you're extracting those moments really nicely out of the day job, but you found ways to incorporate your art through like that drives a half-hour drive, at least maybe a bit more.
Yeah, it's more like 50 minutes.
50-minute
Yeah.
drive to Outlook from Saskatoon. But what I really like about this is this lovely space between the first pole and the left side of the page, because a lot of times it's like if you've been driving for a while, you know how you'll look out your right window, and you'll see telephone pole down the way, and then you'll see nothing out your window. There's a large space between driving. This one, there should have been a pole if you're correctly about come over, I don't know, maybe a ways from there, over a third of that space from the left. There should have
Yeah.
been another pole. But what I love about it is the fact that there's this, when do poles start and when do they end? All of a sudden you're on a road and gee, this road's got poles. It never had, like the other road never had any poles. Now this road has poles. And who determines whether you get poles or not poles? like, I get these crazy.
Well, it's, as you can see, it aids in the composition.
Yes.
It's it
Beautiful
just adds
abstraction.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful abstraction. And what people understanding is, in perspective, if you were to line the tops of those poles up and the landscape, the horizon line and the road, at some point all of them would meet to a dot. So the perspective is still there, but even though you don't see it. So your eye is allowed to finish that page. I want to go to the right. I don't know what's there, but there's a road there somewhere. And
Yeah, it's a mystery.
well, it's a mystery, but I love it in
And
that.
the
Yeah.
mystery of of hope and opportunity and what the future holds. It's that's what I find, and the road is symbolic and a metaphor for taking you somewhere, that you're on your journey.
Yeah.
And I find that roads are fascinating.
Yeah. Well, this is a lovely piece. It's not just going straight up the page, but it's got it's moving my eye around, and it's exciting. I like the other piece of the very first one, but I like this one for what it offers as well,
Thank you.
And then we go to this one. And this one Stephen loves. He just loves this one. What's that? Oh, New York.
Yeah, I was in New York.
This one. This must have been from a trip somewhere that you were in New York.
The housing in New York, where there almost rows and rows of townhouses, and I think they call them brown homes.
Okay.
And,
brownstones? Is that what they call it?
Brownstone, yes. And this was me just getting started on a painting, and then realizing that I needed to stop because I have one thing that I did learn at NSCAD was to know when to pause and to look back. I still find that sometimes I can take things a little bit further than I need to. So, and this was a building with a home with beautiful ornate stairway, wrought iron and concrete steps, and a beautiful brick building. And so this was me preparing and doing underpainting, and then I just stopped and felt really comfortable with what was on the canvas. It's quite a large piece. I think that it's 5 by 4 feet.
Okay.
And one of you often hear professors say, and I'm not sure if you've heard the same, that yellow is the most challenging color to work with in a painting. And I remember that was at our instruction beforehand, the week before. And so what I decided to do was to, see what can I do with yellow, and why would it be? And I feel like this yellow works well in this piece. It's quite strong. It's in a private collection. It was picked up very quickly at an exhibition, and I think it's a striking piece.
Yeah, no, it is. I find mine is green. Green is the color. Yellow I can go over top of and do stuff with, but green can be intimidating. It's hard to mix with other colors. It's hard to find the right chroma of color to go with that. It's one of those things. Yellow can be it's a warm tone, but it can. A lot of people use things in yellow tones, like oranges for an underpainting. They'll coat out their white canvas with something and then paint on top of it and stuff. But I love that you did stop. I mean, it's a striking piece. It has a real feeling, and the more you look at it, the more you see in it. Right? Initially, you don't get it, until you look at it longer and longer and longer. You caught more nuances in it than you think than when you went in. Even down to, that little chimney stack or whatever it is on the right there that sticks up over. It's yellow, but it's a different yellow. There's light hitting that yellow. So you've created, because this is a little on the greeny yellow side, a little bit. It's not a pure chromium yellow out of the
Mhm.
tube or something, right? So there's a feeling of light and a sense of light, yet you've still kept, the that voluminous feeling of minimalism. That's the strength of it. I guess I'll call the strength of a solid space, and it's not just a square of color. I love that the way it breaks up on the top of the page. There's not a flat roof. Where you see a flat roof chimney, flat roof. It's you've got it on an angle where it's just you're telling me a little bit about it's a residence. It's a place where people live, and it's a nice piece. I mean, it's a very dominant piece, and I can see maybe why it stands out when you go into a group show. A lot of times you have to, and if you want to be somewhat found, or this goes to any big art event, you might go where there's 300 booths of artists, and you go, how is anybody ever going to find me after they walk through the place and come back to me out of 300 other artists? The odds are very little that they'll actually come back to you. It's just they can't find you. I mean, you can leave a trail of breadcrumbs for them or something, but they remember solid works. They remember things that punch them in the face that say, I'll remember that one. And yes, it's true. Things that shock them a little bit. And they go, of the pieces, it filters out the ones that are serious about buying your work. And you don't get everybody coming back to your booth, but you get a few that just make that. It's like that lady and the gentleman that purchased a piece of work. They said that previous one they knew, and then when you say this is the last one, then it's gone. Like they said, I got to have
Yeah,
one. So I think people remember that you've got to produce what's in your heart first and how you feel, and
absolutely.
otherwise you become vanilla, and there's no flavor. I love vanilla, but
And
there's
even though I like vanilla,
uh, vanilla extract behind your ear, just like Granny and Beverly Hillbillies. Um, this one. So we're going to start a few of your incorporation of domestic animals on the landscape. Do
Mhm.
you have horses as a person? Do you have?
No, when I was out at NSCAD going to school, my son then came for my graduation and a friend. And so we took a road trip to Prince Edward Island and we pulled over and I saw this beautiful white horse in the background, a ways from the road. And I keep thinking that she walked over and I just went right up to the gate to be close to us. And so I took her picture. And then, of course, she was in a more of a field of daisies. It was
Mm,
really quite beautiful. But of course, I switched that up. And yeah, I had never painted a horse before. And she
yeah.
was just so stoic and really seemed to want to, communicate with us.
Mhm.
She was just lovely.
I
Yeah.
love it how she's part of the landscape. She's
Mhm.
it's not a horse and then green grass and those kinds of things. And the horse is lovely drawn. I mean, soft edges and back things and the way you can paint. That you don't have to paint pristinely around a horse to give you the feeling of this friend. The horse is friendly. I just know that it's not just the look and demeanor, the eyes, and not everything has to be perfect. Anatomically perfect. I don't think the I, and I'm trying to go through the composition, the quotation marks of red lines and saying, and that's almost exclamation marks and saying, those are kind of symbolistic things. I love it. I love the sky, the turmoil, that dark sky that might ready to rain. There's something there, but the light is beautiful on the horse. Yeah, I just love that buff feeling of the ground that the horse sits on. So it's it's not cold, and it's just got a feeling. The horse pops off the page, but not really loudly. You know what I mean? Like it's there and it belongs there. And we're going to go through a couple more here that you've got. But can you talk to the coloration choices and say those red slashes? What are we discussing here?
Oh yeah, that there was a pole, evident in the background that I just switched it up and made it more abstract and more colorful,
Yeah,
and looking at the composition and balancing off the work, and making sure that there was a few little shrubs around and trees, and I just placed them where I wanted them to be, and so that they only were a complement to the
yeah.
object of the horse, the
No,
subject.
lovely choices. And I think it's that. If I said go see Gale's horse paintings, people have in their mind what they're going to see. Oh, horse. But when you go to see your horse, it's different than somebody else's drawing of a horse or painting of a horse, and that's what you really want. I think you want it to be your horse, the way you see the horse, and not just a portrait of the horse. I think that's kind of different a little bit.
Mhm.
Mama, and the little one. Of the paintings of horses, I love the two, but I love this one. Um, you know,
Thank you.
what is it about making choices about what's the dominant horse? What's important? Is it the landscape, the horse, the sunset?
Well, I don't often separate. For me, it's just the holistic. It's the whole piece and how it works. So how every element speaks to one another, and I want it integrated so that it's in this piece, the colt is, of course, who's reaching out to you and looking ahead, and he was actually chocolate brown, and his mother was chocolate brown in
oh,
that, and I just switched him up and made him a little a little white horse with,
oh,
yeah,
he's
and
it's gorgeous. No, I just love the melding of the horse and the landscape, and this coloration, this little dashes of red and orange that that bring that sun setting into the horse, and they're little spots of directing my eye. I mean, it's quite different than your road series. I mean, these pieces.
Mhm.
And of them, I really like this horse one. It's really got a nice feel.
Thank you.
So,
Well, as all parents of children, and you see the mother of the colt there, it's something that is, it's always in our midst, right there, the that influence of our parent standing over us, just being part of our everyday. They become more, they fade. It fades. It's something that it's not immediate. They're not in your presence and feeding you and clothing you, but as time passes, their presence is there,
yeah,
and so it's the diminishing of the um, physical presence of the mother, and so that's how this came about.
yeah. So as the mother, the young one grows up, the mother becomes more distant, and they become independent. So they're not
Mhm.
independent. I love that analogy. And it comes off nicely where she's there, and at some point she won't be there. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful piece. It's hard things to do, and do you find that sometimes those things come to you the next morning when you come back down to look at the piece and you see, oh my goodness, like maybe there was some kind of psychological thing in your mind that you captured, or did you purposely start off that way? Like when
No, they, it's more of a natural, organic kind of process for me. It's always that way. I might have some deliberate intentions, but I'm always open to the idea that they will just unfold. Things will unfold organically, and I accept that. And this piece is stems from our life at Cree Lake when my husband was with the federal government, Environment Canada, and we were at a weather station in Cree Lake, which is um, central to the north part of Saskatchewan. There were 4 houses and then some buildings for supplies and where they did the work, measuring the weather. And I was up there with the 2 children, and I was homeschooling, and we were just out on for walks every day, and our supplies were flown in, and we were right on the lake, so we had boats access to and 4-wheelers, and this wolf came and stood. We'd often have wildlife around our home. This wolf came and stood in front of quite a distance away in front of our home. And so I just took pictures in front of, through the living room window. And then a few days later, sadly, he was found dead beside our house. I had put out a chicken carcass, but so he was sent. His body was sent in for testing, and he died of starvation.
Oh dear.
And it was quite sad. Those kinds of things are.
Yeah, it's a tough
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
But he had a look. People often say about this painting is that anywhere you are in the room, he's looking at you. So he's owned by a lovely friend, Shelley Leffler, who says that she feels like he's her overseer, he's her protector. So, and I just presume he's a male. I didn't, beyond that, it just is something I just assumed.
Yeah.
And he's really massive on the canvas. It's once again a 4x5 painting, and he has, I think he commands the a respect of his species. They're quite beautiful animals.
Yeah. You have to move along here a little bit, but we got
Oh,
pelicans.
yeah, and that was, I photographed them on the water right in Saskatoon over by the
Weir.
weir. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody knows that we have there's a kind of a lottery as to when the pelicans are going to return every spring.
Yeah, they're quite beautiful. It's lovely to see them. Always lovely to see them.
They're quite good fishermen.
And this parrot was actually in a cage in Hawaii. We were in Oahu for a holiday, and do you know, he just looked at me once again with these longing eyes and it was all in the eyes. People have stood up really close to this piece, and they thought it was a geographical picture of land.
Could be.
But then they had to step. I said, no, you need to step back to the other side of the room, and then they would see the eye and the beak. But I took the cage. I freed him because he was caged. He was in this very expensive hotel, and there were a few of them. And I just thought, well, I'm going to liberate this beautiful parrot.
He's very friendly looking there. Yeah, get that smile on his beak, and just kind of.
He's almost got a smile, doesn't he?
He does almost have that little thinking. He's thinking a little bit. It's funny how you get that between the right and nuance in the beak and the smile in the eye. I mean, the bird itself is very soft, like it's passages, and kind of, even though it's bright colors, it's melted into that warm gray pinky background, and it just kind of, and I did, looked at this. I said, should we show this? Is not, it's minimalism in a different way, like, because the shape is soft focus. It's not a sharp edged painting. It's kind of a, it's tough when you do animals, different than say landscape. But, and then this is that ribbon, that road ribbon that we're going to end on. But can you speak?
Oh, yeah.
Are we looking at the same road that you've been painting for in that series? Is this probably the same one?
I actually believe that this came from a trip to Waskesiu.
Okay.
But I just, at one point I just removed, I love the fold in the road where it almost disappears and then it reappears up ahead. So you see it's been partitioned or, separated,
Right.
in way ahead in your perspective down the road. There's a, yeah. And then it all of a sudden reappears. So I just love that play. And once again, it's just a very stripped down, elemental version of our landscape. But of course, as you know, Waskesiu has, what I understand from aerial views and that my husband's spoken about, is that we have a lot of forest around the roads, but when you look at aerial views, they've been clear cut. There's been a lot of clear cutting in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, they masked the sides of the highway with roads, and they pilfer all the foliage in between, so it's not a very good feeling. We got a lot of. So is the environment kind of important to you? A little bit responses to that in your work, and
well, as a geographer, and as a planner, of course. I look at the growth and the expansion of our cities, and that they need to be, smartly considered, because you don't want to continually use up farmland to build. I prefer densification, as most planners do. Which your infrastructure, for one thing, is more effective and less costly if it's in a denser, confined area. So
yeah, no.
In Saskatchewan here, though, I think we have the attitude that there's no end to our land and access to our land, but that's certainly not the case.
No, I think we're into the need to manage what we have. Well, look at the guy up there. What is he doing?
I know the killjoy is here. So it was very, very beautiful. I'm sorry that the New York piece sold, but if you give us the address, we'll go get it. No, so my question is that if somebody sees your work and likes it and wants an original, what does it range from what price to what price?
So the smaller, I think they might be 3x4, and some of them might even be 32 by 40 inches. They had sold, about 5 to 10 years ago for about 1,800.
Okay.
And upwards of then 4,000 is my larger pieces.
Very cool.
And those prices have remained for years. I haven't.
Years, okay. Well, the reason I ask is because remember we go out globally, so you never know who's watching and where they're watching. And your web link, I can't speak today. Your link will be below. So if anybody wants to go and see your work or go to your site to purchase something, I figured most people want to know before they click. So that's why we want to tell them. So that's why. So Gale's link will be below. Feel free to click and purchase away. So there you go.
My email is also listed on my website, so
There
they
you
can
go.
contact me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
This has been very nice. Thank you so much, Stephen and Paul.
Oh, thank you for being here.
For this
More Paul than me.
opportunity.
I just sit here and look pretty. That's my job. Like I say, it's more Paul than me. He's the intellectual. I just sit here and look pretty. That's my job. So
we just nice to have a good conversation about art and what you're doing. And
it was very nice.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
It's
And
all
thank
my
everybody for
pleasure.
watching. And don't forget to subscribe and like. And if you like Gail's work, let her know. And we'll see everybody next Thursday with another artist from Canada. Gail, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Paul, is always a pleasure.
Thank
And see everybody
you.
next week. Cheers, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.